Harley Finkelstein is an entrepreneur, lawyer, and the chief operating officer of Shopify. Founded his first company at age 17 while a student at McGill. Completed his law degree as well as an MBA at the University of Ottawa, where he co-founded the JD and MBA Student Society and the Canadian MBA Oath. Harley is also one of the dragons on CBC's Next Gen Den, and recently received the Canadian Angel Investor of the Year Award, Canada's Top 40 Under 40 Award, inducted to the Order of Ottawa. Welcome, Harley.
Hey there, thanks for having me.
And Lindsay Taub, Harley's wife, is a foodie and entrepreneur, a wife and a mom to 2 young children, used to be a psychotherapist, but now chooses to help people with something even more therapeutic than therapy, which is ice cream. Believes in the healing power of sweet dairy and non-dairy treats, and loves being a delicious part of her community with her shop, Sundae School. Hello, Lindsay.
Hello.
Great. So I feel like I have to open all of this with, how are things at home? We're all at home right now. How are things for you two? You have 2 girls, both under the age of 4. What's it been like?
Well, it's definitely different. We're both used to like a pretty fast-paced, always on the go kind of a lifestyle, and now we're home a lot. So I will say that it's been really nice to have the time with the kids, because there's absolutely nowhere else to go. So I'm trying to appreciate that and just like spend as much time with my kids as possible, which of course is really, really hard. Sometimes I think anyone who has young kids knows it's really hard, but it's also fun.
Yeah, I found it to be, the family side of things has been great. I get to spend more time with my kids. I recently calculated that I spent something like 100 nights in hotels in 2019. So basically a third of the year I spend traveling for work. I haven't traveled for work in 9 weeks. We've been at our home here. So that has been really good. On a more personal level, and to get a little, I guess, more vulnerable in front of dozens of my closest friends, some that I've never met, I will say that I found my anxiety levels to be considerably elevated over the last few weeks. I'm an extrovert. I've been described as a power extrovert by some. I derive energy from being around people and crowds and socializing, and I don't have that right now. And so my anxiety levels have been considerably higher than usual. And the things that I've typically used to mitigate and to manage, like meditation and exercise, are not working at the same efficacy as I think they have in the past. So other than that, the cool part about my business and about Shopify is that we sort of, we've always been good digital nomads in many ways. And so from a business perspective, I think we've been able to adapt very quickly to this sort of new working environment.
That's really interesting. How have you found, so much of our connection right now is about having one screen and another screen and talking to people in other ways. Have you found that effective, Harley? I think a lot of people are experiencing the same things you are around anxiety and around not being able to count on the same things they have in the past. Is this sort of thing helping? Is it hurting? How's it working for you?
It's neutral to slightly positive. What has been helping, actually, I have found is I've changed my model around my own personal social media. So I'm putting out a lot more video now, as opposed to I used to put a lot of text and photos. I'm recording a lot. You're in my home office. You're looking at my home office right now, and you can't sort of see it, but hopefully you can see how crisp my camera is and how good the sound of my microphone is. I've adapted as much as I possibly can, and I found that video and interacting with people in a more visual way on social media, that has been helpful. I'm doing a lot of FaceTime calls. Lindsay and I, we play Name That Tune with like 40 or 30 of our best friends from around the world on Saturday nights. So we're trying to make do, but there's some loneliness to it. And as we were sort of talking in the pre-show, I think Lindsay and I are both sort of, when we feel lonely or we feel somewhat not full in terms of our energy levels, depleted in some ways, not completely depleted, but less full than usual, we sort of throw it into how can we help? So whether it's calling the person that cuts my hair and saying, hey, I'm going to pre-purchase 300 haircuts right now, so you have cash flow, or it's supporting organizations like the food bank or Salis, or it's helping entrepreneurs get set up very quickly. That's kind of how we're trying to cope with this, is by directing our anxiety, our attention to helping others as much as possible. And that actually has been pretty good. That has been therapeutic.
It's great. I want to get a lot more into that as we go on here and talk about it. One of the, this is, as Chantal mentioned off the top, this is the first Q&A with Ottawa Magazine Insider. We're very proud to be also be doing this with Toronto Life Insider. So two of a sister publication in our same company. So we have guests from Toronto and Ottawa here today. We have something in common in that, neither of us are from Ottawa. I'm the publisher of Ottawa Magazine, in addition to my responsibilities with the wider company. Both of you moved to Ottawa. You're both from Montreal. I'm originally from Calgary. But we've all adopted this as a home, and a home that we love. I'm curious, you came here for university, and I want to get, we're going to get into a little bit. You both, put out a letter to the city right before the new year, talking about your love for it and also your dreams for the future of the city. But I want to start with, you're both from Montreal and you came here. Like, what stood out to you about Ottawa when you first moved to town?
Well, when I first moved to Ottawa, I immediately wondered where all the restaurants were and where all the people were. But we're going way back, right? Like, I moved to Ottawa, 12 years ago. And I have to say, the city has totally changed now. When I first came here, I missed Montreal, but I have to say now, like, I love Ottawa. This is my home now. And I think it's an amazing city in its own right. And no, it's not Montreal, but thank goodness it's not Montreal. Not that I love Montreal, not to knock Montreal, but Ottawa has its own unique characteristics that make it really special. And, the restaurant scene is totally exploding. The culture is like evolving all the time. And I'm really proud to say that I live here.
I think the biggest, I moved to Ottawa a few years before Lindsay. I moved to Ottawa in 2005 to go to law school. And I only moved here because a mentor of mine convinced me that to become a better entrepreneur, I should consider a law degree, which frankly was the right thing. And I encourage a lot of people to think about law school for non-professional reasons, for just finishing school reasons, and teach you how to think and write. But the thing that I've always found so interesting about Ottawa is that it feels to me a little bit like the people that aren't from Ottawa tend to appreciate some of the nuances of Ottawa more than people from Ottawa. That Lindsay and I spent a great deal of our time convincing people that were born and raised in Ottawa how great Ottawa is. And that I find so strange, considering we come from Montreal, where there's this incredible pride and there's incredible love for Montreal and the joie de vivre and the culture. And the reason we wrote the love letter to Ottawa was, one, to remind everyone that lives in Ottawa how great this place is. We're fortunate that we can pretty much live anywhere and can have homes in other places. And we think Ottawa is a very, very special place. But when you compare Ottawa to other places and you say, well, Ottawa's restaurant scene is not as good as Montreal. No, of course not. But the population is different. The culture is different. There's an entirely different model there for nightlife. Or Ottawa's not as great as New York. Of course not. But so what you need to, what we think Ottawa needs is to appreciate the fact that, I can skateboard from our home to Shopify HQ in downtown Ottawa. And then we can get to the Gatineau Park in 20 minutes, and we can go skiing an hour away, and appreciate what Ottawa has. And if you use that lens, you realize what an incredible place this is.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And I also think that Ottawa people need to be a bit louder and more obnoxious about how great it is here, because everybody from Montreal or from New York will say, this is the greatest city in the world, And I think people think that about Ottawa, but maybe they don't want to say it. They're polite. Well, it's pretty good. Like, be louder about it. Have more swagger, as our PM said a few years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably a pretty reasonable characterization. One of the things your letter said, and maybe this comes with that sort of humbleness, is that Ottawa can be risk averse. And something that I've been wondering about, and I think there are reasonable examples of that being the case. You went through some of them in your letters, but what I'm wondering about, I wonder if you've been thinking about as well. The thing about COVID-19 is, I think it's making us all a little bit jittery, and I wonder if there's a risk that that COVID-19 is going to amplify that instinct when we come out of it.
I think that's going to be a risk anywhere, not just in Ottawa. Look, the world is totally changing now. If you're going to talk about a pre-COVID world versus a post-COVID world, they're going to be totally different, regardless of where you are.
I do think, though, that this is a hypothesis and a presumption, and maybe I'll be proven right or wrong in this, but I actually think that Ottawa, in terms of the elements of the city, play better in a post-COVID world than other cities might. What I mean by that is we have a very large geographic landmass. I know we're trying to expand the geography and of Ottawa, sort of what is deemed to be the municipality of Ottawa, but you can live in Gatineau and still, quote unquote, live in Ottawa. You can live 40 minutes away in Orleans or in Canada or Ottawa South. And as we've all adopted, just as we're doing now, this transition into video conferencing and more virtual work setups and work from home, I think we're all kind of realizing that this won't be the case after COVID, lessens its impact. But we're all kind of realizing, hey, we can do this. And whereas in Montreal, people have moved into 400 or 500 square foot apartments or downtown Toronto to be close to the downtown core. But if the downtown core becomes less important in a post-COVID world, then the 500 square foot apartment that you're paying for doesn't actually make as much sense. And the fact that you can have affordable housing in Ottawa, on the suburbs, in Gatineau or in Chelsea or in Wakefield or in Lac Ste. Marie, at an affordable rate and have land, have a backyard, have a place to walk around, that actually lends itself really well, at least as far as I'm concerned, in this kind of post-COVID dynamic.
Yeah. Since COVID started, you become directly involved with a bunch of different things. You talked about some of them, but you're fundraising for the Ottawa Food Bank, many different causes. I wonder what's inspired you specifically about some of the, and thinking about Ottawa specifically, some of the causes that you become involved with in these past weeks.
I mean, some of it is just, let's just put this on the table. Lindsay and I come from fairly humble beginnings. Like the life that we live right now is not the life that either of us grew up with. We always had food on the table, but things were tough for both of us growing up. And so to some extent there is, not to sort of, to quote Spider-Man, like with great power comes great responsibility. And we feel very blessed that we've been able to build a life for ourselves. We've been fortunate on the professional front to be able to do these things. And in some ways, I think when you are successful, you better pay it forward. Like you absolutely have to pay it forward. And so over the past couple of years, as our lives have changed and we have the means to help, we think we absolutely have to help. But there is also this other thing, which is, and this was the case with the Ottawa Food Bank campaign that we did. There's two ways to help any of these causes. There's one way is you write the check and you do it anonymously. And that, by the way, fits really nicely into that Ottawa philosophy and mindset, which is quiet philanthropy. And that's really helpful. And for some people, it's exactly the way that they want to contribute. The way that we've always looked at it is we can actually be force multipliers. We can be catalysts for these things. So we can give 5 or 10,000, or we can give 5 or 10,000, but also tell, in the case of the Ottawa Food Bank, we can also tell, I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of like 500,000 people about this campaign, and bring in Tom Green, bring in Wu-Tang Clan, and bring in all these other people to contribute, end up raising, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so that tends to be the way that we like to do things, which is a little bit louder than I think what most people see in Ottawa. But from an impact perspective, from return on time or return on investment, we think it's really effective. It's highly valuable.
Well, and at the end of the day, it's more money for the food bank. So, they had a particular, idea of how much money they would be able to get, and it exceeded that. So I'd say the strategy was pretty effective.
But with that comes, I mean, this is not going to be surprising, of course, but with that, Duncan, comes, you have to have some chutzpah or some audacity. You have to have the courage to be disliked. You have to have the courage on social media when someone says, why didn't Harley and Lindsay just give the money? Why did they have to give the money and also create this sort of retweet campaign? Well, the reason was because we wanted to have an impact beyond just financial, we also wanted to give awareness to the food bank. And that tends to be the way that we do things. And I think, I mean, we don't need to spend too much time on philanthropy or charity, but I will say that I think Lindsay and I are in our mid-30s, and we're just learning about how to be good community leaders, how to be good, mini philanthropists. And I think that we believe that maybe we can inspire others to sort of think about starting to give at a much earlier stage and do it in a way that may not necessarily seem very Ottawa-like because it's a little bit louder. But man, is it effective. It's highly effective.
And I also just want to add that, people can also be giving with their time, and, maybe not everybody has a lot of money to give, and that's okay. But there's still many, many ways that you can give back.
I wonder if you have any other examples that really stand out to you from this stretch of time. There have been, I mean, we've been, on OttawaMagazine.com, as the stories have emerged, it feels like Ottawa has done that really effectively. That there is an ethic of helping out that has probably always been there, but maybe at a time when people feel disconnected, they are more likely to talk, try to share that and bring it out. I wonder if you two have any other examples that stand out for you.
I have a really good one. So Patricia Larkin, she's a chef in town, and she makes Bucci Pop kombucha. And
Shopify merchant.
She's a Shopify merchant, and she's really cool.
She's cool.
We really like her just in general. And she decided, when her Bucci Pop was not selling as much because the restaurants didn't know if they were going to be able to have any customers to sell it to, she transformed her business basically into a virtual farmers market. So now you can go onto the site. It's the Burrow Shop. And you can basically buy all these different products from all these other local vendors that wouldn't otherwise have a platform to do it. So, you can buy top shelf preserves, you can buy pasta, you can buy sourdough starter from Nat's Bread. I bought it. There's a whole bunch of things you can do. And I think that's just such a great example of someone giving back to the community and supporting other entrepreneurs.
That's one thing that I'm noticing now is, there's this great book called Anti-Fragile. It's a book by Nassim Taleb, who wrote Black Swan, iconic writer. But there's a book called Anti-Fragile that he wrote. And basically, the reason that I wouldn't give either my daughters, this glass of water is because if she dropped it, the glass is fragile and it would break. And so we give her a plastic cup instead because it's robust. If she drops the plastic cup, it won't break. Well, Taleb actually talks about a third system called the anti-fragile system. And the best example of the anti-fragile system is the immune system, where there are some systems in the world that exist where shocks and problems happening to it actually makes it stronger. And one of the things that I'm seeing across, particularly in Ottawa, but generally across the world with entrepreneurs right now, is there is this resiliency. When COVID first hit, Lindsay and I were spending the weekend with two of our best friends, Steve and Maureen Becta. Steve Becta is this amazing restaurateur in Ottawa, owns 3 of the best restaurants, and is someone we're very close with, someone we're also very proud of. And all of a sudden, Steve had he comes from way more humble beginnings than even we did. Really tough upbringing, but did everything he possibly could, including working as an intern and then a sommelier at 11 Madison Park, the #1 restaurant in the world, to build this restaurant group in Ottawa. And all of a sudden, overnight, it was over, closed. Now, he'll reopen, of course, but for the time being, they're closed. And Steve was here. He was literally, we were sitting right out there. And we started talking about what else can happen here. And we started talking about the fact that he actually is one of the best sommeliers. People need wine right now. And all of a sudden, this idea for Curated by Becta came to life. And now Steve has this brand new business, Curated by Becta, which you fill out a form, you tell him your wine preferences, and he sends you a case of curated wine from one of the cellars at one of his restaurants. That to me is the resiliency that inspires me more than anything else during this crisis. It inspires me the same way that people are stepping up for charities. I'm watching entrepreneurs go back to their entrepreneurial roots and just say, I will not stop. I will not fail at this. I will figure out a path forward. I will be anti-fragile. And that, I think, is happening. We were talking in the pre-show. We've ordered food from North and Navy in Ottawa.
I love local delivery.
And local delivery, the Responsible Choice guys are doing. It is inspiring what we are doing. Again, if we were doing this in Toronto or New York, we'd probably be writing articles about it, whereas Ottawa, we're a little bit more modest and we don't talk about it as much. But let Lindsay and I sort of say that, like, the Ottawa entrepreneurs are killing it right now, and they're doing an amazing job finding resiliency and finding silver linings.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, the curator by Vecta. I mean, I placed my order. I'm picking it up tomorrow. I'm very excited. Like,
you're gonna love it.
Like, look, I've been ordering wine from Canadian wineries, and I think a lot of us are trying to shop as local as we possibly can during this period of time. But to have this, it's kind of this delight. I mean, you don't know exactly what you're going to get before you get it, but you know where you're going to get it from. Anyone who's been to those restaurants knows the quality of the wine list and how strong that selection is going to be. I also think Equator Coffee. I live in Westboro. There's one of their locations is here. The other morning I realized they didn't have any beans. They had set themselves up to deliver within 30 minutes to get beans. I mean, these are things that are actually improving upon anything that existed before.
And that won't go away, right? Some of the things, when COVID subsides, will go back to not normal, but there will be a new normal.
Mm-hmm.
But some of these things will actually exist indefinitely in the future because they're just great ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And the shock to the system that has happened for a lot of these local businesses has made some of them far more resilient. And we got dough from Heartbreakers Pizza.
Mm-hmm.
We made it on Friday night it was amazing. We made it with the kids,
fun.
and like we needled the dough, and the kids made their own pizzas, and I put on it was so cool. So as much as we talk about the tough times that so many small business entrepreneurs are going through, there are some that are finding these silver linings, and that gives us incredible amounts of hope. So that's a long answer to a very short question, but
I mean, it's anyone who's been looking at business news knows that that Shopify has actually grown by quite a bit since COVID started, both in terms of the number of stores it's onboarding, in terms of its presence in the market. This is one of those unusual circumstances. I mean, when we talked about this again in the pre-show, you said that the hypothesis at Shopify is that we're in the year 2030, 10 years early. That's what this is doing to retail. I wonder if you can elaborate a bit on that and sort of talk a bit about both how you came to that and then the changes that stand out that mean to it, because it's so interesting.
Well, I mean, I think one thing that people need to realize is that despite all of us now shopping online to some extent, e-commerce as a percentage of total retail is actually pretty small. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of 14-15% in Canada and somewhere in the neighborhood of 15-16% in the US. The growth rate, of course, is much bigger than physical retail, but it's less than if you take all of retail, it's less than a fifth of it is done online.
Mm-hmm. My mom still shops in person.
That's right.
And so does yours.
Yeah. So what did COVID do? Well, my mom's
shopping online
right.
now.
So is my mom. And so is my
cool.
85-year-old grandmother.
Yeah.
And so in many ways, it's catalyzing this pull to sort of what would have been the case in 2030. And in the case of my grandmother, for example, who's 85 years old, I never loved the fact that she was still grocery shopping in the middle of winter in Montreal, which are, notoriously have really tough winters. Now she knows that she can place an order because this has been a forcing function for her to learn how to go on IGA and whatever the things are. But the other part of it is, and those of you that are listening and that know Jeff York will appreciate this, I've been trying to get Farm Boy onto Shopify for like 5 years. Lindsay knows, like, every time I see Jeff York, I ask him why Farm Boy is not on Shopify. I do the exact same thing with Galen Wesson for Loblaws. Well, guess what? Last week, Loblaws created meal kits on Shopify, and Farm Boy created a way for seniors and people that healthcare workers, pregnant women, to
anyone high risk,
to do curbside pickup. They're doing with Shopify. So would Loblaws and would Farm Boy have eventually moved online? Yeah, eventually it would have happened, but it's happening right now because of the circumstances. And I think this digitalization of businesses is happening at a pace right now that simply would have taken a decade to do. And I'm really happy about that. And by the way, it's also for Shopify to digitalize faster, even though we are a digital company. And one example is yesterday we launched contactless debit card payments, so that someone walks into Lindsay's ice cream shop to buy, and we can talk a bit about what her plan is to open up in a few weeks, but someone walks into her ice cream shop, they don't have to touch anything. So it's even forced companies like ours, who are frankly digital natives, to rethink how we help businesses deal with the situation right now. And I'm looking forward to that future. I'm looking forward to a future where more brick and mortar stores, more traditional businesses, more of the places we love in our communities are able to survive because they've digitalized.
I actually do. I want to ask Lindsay. I want to ask you a bit about Sundae School and the plans you're making. I'm curious about the contactless payment. Like, is that something that you fast tracked 10 weeks ago? Is that something that was in the works already? You fast tracked, or did you go from zero to it's in the market?
No, it was in the works already. I mean, working with the debit card companies is always a little challenging, but no, we just fast tracked. Curbside pickup, local delivery, gift cards for everyone, so anyone can open a Shopify store, even if you're a service-based business like a barber shop or a hair salon or a nail salon. You can now set up a very simple store on Shopify. It's free for 3 months. We give a 90-day free trial, and then you can sell gift cards very quickly. A lot of that stuff, we simply pivoted the company quickly to double down on things that people need right now and not wait any longer. I think that's the reason why you've seen an increase in new store creations between mid-March and mid-April, because everyone's now trying to figure out, what is my version of an online business or digital business? And if you're a restaurant, maybe you're selling wine, or you're selling cookbooks. And if you're a yoga studio, maybe you're selling classes, or you're selling yoga mats. And as I mentioned on the earnings call last Wednesday, if you're an 88-year-old grandmother in northern Italy who had this great business teaching tourists how to make pasta on their vacations and there's no tourism, you set up a store on Shopify and start selling your courses, which is great.
So that's a good trend in the food business. So Lindsay, I think tell everyone, people who don't know about Sundae School, I mean, what kind of an ice cream shop it is and what you do there. And then I'm curious to hear, what adjustments you're making. And this would be about the time that typically you'd start to have kids pouring in the front door, leaning over the counter, and that just can't happen anymore.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So I opened Sundae School 3 years ago. This will be actually my 4th season. And my vision for Sundae School was as a community gathering spot. I had just had our first daughter, Bailey, and Harley and I were going for these evening walks, and I said, "Hey, there's no ice cream shop in our neighborhood. How is this possible?" And it was summer. She was born in June 12th, and I just couldn't believe there was no ice cream shop in our community. There used to be one, and it burnt down, and I guess they weren't able to reopen. And so Harley was very encouraging, and he said, "You should do it." And I said, "Okay, I'll do it if I can come up with a name." And then somehow Sundae School came to me, and I just thought that was really fun. And so we do ice cream with. Well, we have basic ice cream. It's not basic. It's delicious basic ice cream. But we also have lots and lots of toppings. And I think people really, really love the toppings. And, we are called Sundae School after all. And traditionally a sundae is covered with stuff. And people really like that. So it's tough because a huge part of the experience of Sundae School is coming to Sundae School. It's really fun in there. And the kids, one of my favorite parts about the business is just seeing the kids and the parents and everybody that comes in. When they walk through the door, everyone's like, "Wow, look at all the toppings." And "Wow, look, there's a kids play area and there's lots of fun colors and there's a chalkboard for the kids to draw on and lots of different things to touch. There's toys. There's these little mats that we have that kids can color on." So, a lot of that experience is just not going to happen right now given the circumstances. But, obviously, I've been trying to figure out how to still continue to offer my community these treats, but without having to touch anything. So I'm working on some, designing like an online store. I might know someone who can help me with that. I don't know. Might have a connection there. But basically what I'd like to be able to do is have people prepay online, and then maybe there's like a window when they come to pick it up, and somebody can basically go and put the item in their vehicle, or hand it to them or whatever. And so that way no one, there's very minimal touching of things. It's particularly the keypad where you would punch in your code.
It's interesting. Like one of the things that Lindsay is struggling with, and that we're talking a lot about, is how do you digitalize vibe?
Mm-hmm.
That is really tough to digitalize. How do you take the physical feeling, presence, energy of a space and digitalize that? And that is really tough to do.
It is. And it's also, I think, coming to the shop for a lot of people, it's an outing. It's somewhere to go with your kids. It's something to do. So that's going to be different with the current circumstances, for sure.
It's we got our first invitation. We have, my daughter is 7, and she was invited to her first, parade birthday party for later this week. I mean, and it's interesting. I mean, that's the kind of, that's innovation in a way in and of itself, right? I mean, kids are, you need to find a way to make them feel special on their birthday. And people are just trying to solve those problems in kind of the same way. When you were answering the last question, Lindsay, your dog actually came up and
I know I didn't want to make a big fuss, but yeah, he wants in.
I'd say people love dogs. I think you might want to introduce him.
He comes back.
So I just want to remind people, we'll go to I'll have an opportunity at the end of this to, so anyone in the audience would like ask any questions of Harley or Lindsay, feel free to put them into the chat, and we'll get to them in a moment. I wanted to go back a bit to Shopify. On the day we were going to do this last week, Harley, that was the day that it was announced Shopify became the most valuable company in the country. I mean, you've been there not exactly from day one, but basically from the start. I mean, what does something like that mean to you, to the team at Shopify?
I mean, look, as an entrepreneur, it's meaningful, generally, because it means that I think Shopify has been one of the most one of the companies that has been really misunderstood. I think if you were to ask 10 people in any street what Shopify does, 2 of them would still say we're a music service and confuse us with Spotify. And it's because we are not a consumer brand for the most part. We're kind of a brand behind the brand. Mm-hmm. That changes a bit with things like Shopify Pay and Shop Pay in the Shop app, but generally we're a brand to merchants.
Other people think you're Amazon,
or other people. So we have 8 left now of the 10. 2 people think we're a marketplace and don't understand why they can't peruse Shopify's marketplace of our 1 million stores, why they can't buy a Kylie Cosmetics next to an Allbirds, next to a Bombas socks, next to any other product on our platform. And then probably the vast majority would say, oh yeah, Shopify helps you build online stores for small businesses. But actually our model is really different. I would say that in many ways Shopify is the world's first retail operating system. We have small merchants that are just getting started at their mom's kitchen table. We also have some of the largest brands on the planet. I mentioned on the earnings call, Heinz ketchup and Lindt chocolate and Beyonce and Kanye and all these amazing big brands all use Shopify. We also just don't do e-commerce. We have, Lindsay uses Shopify point of sale in her store, in her ice cream shop, in a physical sense. We have a capital business. So what felt good about that announcement was not necessarily the particular market cap, wasn't the particular, eclipsing of any banks per se. It was really more that people are now beginning to understand the Shopify story. And maybe we're a little bit less misunderstood now than we once were. Where it's really helpful, though, is we're trying to recruit the best and the brightest from all over the world. And for the most part, bring them to Canada. Our biggest office is Ottawa. After that, it's Toronto, followed by Montreal and Waterloo. We have 17 offices around the world, but most of the Shopify folks are based in Canada. And so one thing that you do get as being a bigger company is it is easier to recruit. I can go into Amazon or Facebook or Google, and I can have conversations with their best people and say, come and join us and help us build the next generation or the next chapter of retail and commerce. And on a personal level, it's one of the greatest moments of my entrepreneurial career was standing on stage at the New York Stock Exchange on the little platform, ringing the bell to take the company public, the same place that, Henry Ford stood and some of the greatest entrepreneurs in history stood. And we sat there and looking down and seeing all our families. Lindsay was there. We didn't have kids then, but Lindsay next to Toby's wife Fiona and Toby's kids, and like it was so emotional. And so, in many ways, I think that Shopify for me is deeply personal. I think most entrepreneurs feel that way about the thing that they've built. That's not always great. Sometimes it's tough for me to turn off and say, now I'm not going to think about it. But I think that I want more great Canadian success stories. I want to see more acquirers and less acquirees. I want to see more IPOs come out of Canada. I think Canada actually has an unfair advantage on building some of the world's greatest companies, particularly in software and technology. And I think that I hate this. Well, what about RIM and Nortel? Yeah, RIM and Nortel didn't necessarily fare as well. That doesn't mean anything. Like, there are amazing opportunities for so many others. And it's the reason Lindsay and I have invested in more than 30 startups, from restaurants in Ottawa, like Wolf Down and Mad Radish, to lots and lots and lots of technology companies, because we want to back the next great entrepreneurs. We want to encourage them. And I'm really proud of Shopify. And I think the coolest part is, I think we're just getting started, to be quite honest.
I mean, a $1.5 billion raise announced today. I mean, you must have huge plans. Is there, can you somehow kind of coalesce the focus for the next, I mean, look, every business has pivoted and moved their strategies dramatically since this began. It's hard to think of another company that was more well-positioned to be relevant at a time like this than Shopify. Has that changed your focus for the coming?
It feels like our mission to help entrepreneurs and small businesses has never been more relevant than right now. So that's important. We've now given out $1 billion worth of cash advances to small businesses. We just said we're going to give an extra $200 million to help during the crisis. Having more money on the balance sheet helps us do those things, and that's really exciting. But there's some big projects that we're working on. We mentioned the Shopify Fulfillment Network. We want to help small businesses ship in the same way that the biggest companies ship. Shopify Plus, international, physical retail is a big thing for us as well. So there's not necessarily one, in terms of use of, there's not one thing we're doing. It's a lot of those things, and it's really exciting.
I have one more question about Shopify that about the future of really work that I want to get to before I've got some audience questions coming in. Twitter announced today that they sent their workers home at the onset of COVID-19. Twitter announced today that arrangement that is going to last forever. That they're going to keep their offices, but that any employee who wants to work from home can do so. Shopify was one of the very first, and certainly in Ottawa, one of the first in North America to proactively, prior to any orders, say to its employees, we want you to work from home. You're well set up. So what did you think of that announcement from Twitter, and how do you see that changing? Yeah, I mean,
we're still sort of evaluating as information comes in. But the one thing that I think we should all consider as we think about that Twitter announcement is that it turns out a lot of us can work remotely. We just didn't know it. It turns out you can do it really, really well. Yes, it's not perfect. Yes, you miss the serendipitous meetings around the water cooler, but in some cases, we live on Beechwood, and I work downtown, and Lindsay's office on Beechwood, so we don't really commute very much. But there are people that were commuting 2 hours a day in Ottawa. 2 hours a day. That's 10 hours a week that they're getting back. That is incredible. So, and what do they do with the 10 hours? They're spending with their family. They're spending it on their hobbies, on the things that they enjoy doing. So, I don't know exactly where we're going to end up in terms of our own work structure, but I think what Twitter's announcement does demonstrate is you don't have to be in the office to be productive, that there are other ways to be productive. Now, frankly, it's super important to schedule your time properly. So Lindsay and I literally have family time scheduled in our calendars, because there are some times we know that it's family time now and we need that sort of structure. But I think the future of work will change. And honestly, I think, I mentioned earlier that I spent 100 days sleeping in hotels in 2019. I'm certainly going to think whether or not my next, once this all relaxes a bit, whether or not I need to travel as much as I once did. This idea of having a badge of honor hitting, some sort of mileage on some airline feels kind of silly now.
Makes sense. So I want to start in with questions from the audience. Thank you. Thanks for that answer. It's interesting.
Sorry, we let the reason Lindsay's jumping out is we let the dog in. Now the dog wants to go out.
That's how it is. I'd say the same thing about the commute. Look, I like working in offices, and I also travel a lot for work. But I still think about this. My wife and I mean, she's working, I'm working, and we have 2 kids at home. So my wife was a far better organizationally than I am. On the very first day of this whole thing, said, "Here's how we're going to make this work." And we sort of split the day. And, there's flexibility within that when certain things need to happen, but we've been able to support the kids and support our careers at the same time.
That's funny. The new flex isn't a car or a watch or whatever the heck people flexed on. It's internet connection. It's how good's your camera, right? Do you have high speed bandwidth? Do you have fiber? That's the new contemporary modern day flex right now. And that's cool.
At the end of the day, I can walk down the steps, and that's my commute. Right. I walk down, my office is on the 2nd floor. I come down, the kids are there. We can start cooking. It's just an incredible change in lifestyle.
Is that a fish poster behind you?
No, that's Liz Fair. That's
awesome. Very cool.
Yeah. One's Liz Fair, one's Hayden, the Canadian artist Hayden.
Cool.
Favorites of ours. So I want to get to questions from the audience. So I have one here from Tamara. Who says, love the vision and aspiration for Canada and Canadian entrepreneurs, and also that Shopify is hiring now. Young people have been hit hard by the economic fallout of COVID. What message do you have for young adults whose lives may feel like they're in limbo? How do they gear up for the jobs that'll come up in the future?
Lindsay and I literally just filmed before this part of the convocation speech for the graduating class of University of Ottawa, who are graduating in the craziest time ever to graduate. And so we spent some time thinking about this exact question. I think the first thing to think about is I went to law school with about 400 people. I graduated with 400 people from law school. And the vast majority went to law school to get a particular job so they can, at a big law firm in Bay Street, so they can get to an 8th year call or 8th year associate, so they can become a partner, so they can eventually get to a 25-year partnership track and eventually have this, whatever they're searching for, which for some reason seems to be a lot about job security in a kind of a weird way. I think young people need to sort of take control of their own lives. Like, if you want to be a writer, you can go work for a great publication, or you can start a blog. If you want to be in film or television, you can go work in Hollywood, or you can start a YouTube channel. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you can go learn how to be an entrepreneur by working in a company, or you can just start your own side business. But the cost of failure to doing these things today is as low as it's ever been. It's trending towards, it's not zero because there's an opportunity cost of your time, but it's as close to zero as it's ever going to be. And so what I would say is, like, I don't believe that young people should wait for this magical moment where they graduate, quote unquote, get this piece of paper, then go off and do the next phase. It all should be intertwined.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think the reality is the world has been changing for a long time before this. Like, you said before, it shifted us really quickly into 2030, but the world's been changing a lot anyway. You no longer have the security of, I have a degree, or like I have a diploma, so that means I'm going to get a job. So it's been hard. And I think now, especially, of course, it's really, really hard, but everyone is in the same boat. Everyone's gonna have to figure it out together.
I remember
and they will.
I got this email, I don't know, 3 years ago from some friend of a friend who was basically emailing to say, hey, my son is really smart and very talented, and he would really love to work at Shopify, and can you interview him? And I wrote back and said, no, I can't. First off, the people we look for at Shopify, we want resourceful people. We want people that are entrepreneurial. We want people that are, see an opportunity or see, like, solve their own problems. We want people that are independent. Everything about this person's father emailing me felt wrong to me. Now, I don't blame the son, because maybe the father didn't tell the son he was doing that. But that, to me, is what does not work in 2020. Frankly, I don't think it even worked in 2010 or 2000. I think that if you want something, figure out a way to get in front of the people you want. It's reverse engineer it. If I want to work at Shopify, or I want to work in the government, figure out like who the hiring manager is, figure out how to get on that person's radar, reverse engineer that, but be entrepreneurial about it, be resourceful about it. We don't, and I think those that are going to suffer most in this new world that have been suffering are the ones that are using an old playbook, the playbook that their parents or grandparents gave them, which is get a job, go to school, get good grades, get a job. That the term Ma Bell has always been fascinating to me. In fact, I understand why the term was Ma Bell, because frankly, Bell used to take care of their people for their lifetime. It felt almost maternal. Bell took care of me. I was safe. I would have a pension. I don't think young people want safe jobs now. I think they want fulfillment. They want to be fulfilled. And I think the way to get a job that is fulfilling is either to create your own or to be creative about it. I mean, even the way that people apply for Lindsay's ice cream shop, it's amazing. Some people have their mom's call or dad's call and say, my daughter wants a job. And other people write Lindsay the most well-written, interesting letter about why they'd be great at Sundae School. Mm-hmm. And those are the people she hires.
That's great. I mean, that's it's an inspiring answer no matter what the time is. A question coming in, a question from Steven, talking about something a little bit different. So it says, congratulations on your phenomenal success and the focus on small businesses. As an influencer, can Shopify have any impact, or have you already, on merchant credit card fees, which are now absolutely critical to their survival in touchless processing costs?
Can we have an impact? We can certainly push. We can certainly be advocates for it. We can certainly create competitive pricing so that whatever you pay on top of the credit card fees are as small as possible. And I think we've done that with Shopify. One of the great parts about being a platform like ours is that if you aggregate all the stores on Shopify, we are just in the US, we are the second largest retailer in America. Amazon would be number one, Shopify would be number two. We're not one retailer, but if you were to aggregate it, what that means is we can go to the shipping companies or credit card companies, the banks, and we can negotiate as if we are the second largest retailer. And then instead of taking the economies of scale for ourselves, we can give the economies of scale out to all the small businesses. Credit card companies are challenging because they have a model and it works, and they have, for the most part, an oligopoly, and they can decide the credit card fees. But you don't have to take my word for it, Steve, because you don't know me that well, or Stephen, you don't know me that well. But I push really, really hard on this stuff because I realize that is an area right now in particular that could make things easier. And the more merchants join Shopify, the larger leverage I have to ask for those reductions.
Makes sense. Question from Ken, who says, it's amazing to me that we see the joining of local retail and internet retail. The driving idea of e-commerce and the internet in general, perhaps, is that it doesn't matter where you are located. You can order the best wine, for example, from anywhere. You don't need to order it from a sommelier in your hometown. So do you think that coming out of the current crisis, that local retail will be stronger or weaker?
I find, in my opinion, Ottawa is really supportive of local businesses. In general, people in Ottawa really do like to support local businesses. I hear that a lot. And so I think that will continue to be a priority after this is over. Of course, I think more and more people are beginning to understand just how hard it is to be a small business. Like it was already hard to be a small business, and now it's even harder. And so I think that local businesses will continue to be popular after this.
I think the one thing that COVID has also done, it's reminded us that the fabric of our communities, the culture of our communities, is highly dependent on the small businesses. Mm-hmm. Like, again, we live in the Beechwood area in Ottawa. So when we walk down the street, we want to go to a great cafe. We want to go for tacos at Ola Cucina at Donna's restaurant. We want to go to, the ice cream shop. We want to go buy meat at Muckelson's and Brockwell. Yeah. We care about those things. The second all these things open, we're going to be the first people in line. But I think there's a way to have, to act local, but have global reach. And that to me is the real, that's the real move here, is can you have local feel? Can you be local, but also figure out a way to expand your your total addressable market. And one of the stories I often talk about is, some of you know on this call will know Pat and Rocco Nicastro, La Bottega, amazing spot, been around since the 50s. Well, 5 years ago, whenever that was, when we put them on, like 5 years ago, they came on to Shopify, labottega.ca. And now they still have this amazing local grocery store in Ottawa, in the Byward Market, a little restaurant in the back. It feels so intimate. It feels cozy. Rocco's mom is walking around and his dad's walking around, Pat's dad's, just, it feels so local. But yet they sell their olive oil all over the world. They sell their products, balsamic vinegars. They sell some of their coffee machines all over the world. That to me is a perfect dynamic where you can maintain the authenticity of being local, but can sell to a global total addressable market.
Thank you. That's a really interesting example. We've only got a couple of minutes left here. So I want to sort of close it on a similar front, but a little bit sort of a light one. You mentioned you like walking around your neighborhood, looking at places that are local. So maybe tell us, as a question from Anna, what are a few of your favorite spots in Ottawa? Like some fun recommendations for people that they might be able to take home.
So Harley already mentioned La Bottega. That is a gem of a place in the Byward Market.
And by the way, La Bottega and some of these places we're talking about, like one of the litmus tests Lindsay and I use would be, you mentioned, like I was born in Montreal, but I grew up in South Florida. I've lived in Toronto. Lindsay and I have a place in Toronto because we travel so much. So we've been around. One of the things we use is, would this place be world class in any city? And just happens to be in Ottawa. And La Bottega, if you had it in New York or Boston or LA or Toronto or anywhere, Montreal, it would still be, wow, this is an amazing spot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
And that's sorry.
No, that's okay. So I think La Bottega for sure. There's a cafe that I really love going to in my neighborhood. It's the Union Street Kitchen Cafe. I just love that spot. It's like the epitome of a local gem. You just walk in there and the owner, her name is Christine, and she greets everyone by their first name. She knows your order. She's just a wonderful person. I love Tavern on the Hill, Tavern on the Falls. I think, with the warmer weather, it's just such a beautiful place to go and have a drink or have a snack, and you have this beautiful scenery around you. That's really special. You definitely cannot get that kind of experience everywhere.
We love Artisan. Artisan pizza is amazing.
Artisan,
although we just tried Heartbreakers Pizza also. Heartbreakers Pizza is killer. Super, super good. We love Ola Cucina, which is a tiny little Mexican taco restaurant with this amazing chef owner, Donna. We try to find those sort of gems. I mean, we love North and Navy. We love Riviera. Like, these are the places that it sort of feels like home when we're there. We love it there. And the cool part of Ottawa is, I know we have to wrap up now, but we don't have the quantity of restaurants that Montreal does or New York does or Toronto does or South Florida does. What we do have, though, is we have a certain intimacy where if you go to the same restaurants, because there's not that many, there's, 30 really great restaurants in Ottawa instead of 300 in Montreal or 500 in Toronto, you get a chance to meet the owners and the chefs and the servers and the bartenders. And you walk into Riviera and you see Steve Flood at the back making the best cocktails. And there's a certain intimacy that, if you like that, and we really love that aspect of Ottawa, it makes it so charming. It makes it such a wonderful place to live.
That's a great way to wrap it up. Listen, you've been very generous with time. Totally agree about the restaurants. I mean, we are lucky to have some incredible spots in town, and you've named a lot of them there. And I know, it's a big part of what we do at Ottawa Magazine is help people understand.
So many more. I wish I could mention all of them.
Where you can get a great meal.
I just because you're about to wrap up, and one thing I will say to anyone that's watching in sort of the playback, let's just be a little bit louder. Let's do things and tell people. Let's have more audacity. Let's take more risks. We have the foundation of just such an incredible place to live. Lindsay and I will live in Ottawa the rest of our lives. We are choosing to live there. It is so wonderful, but let's flex a little bit. Let's have more swagger about our city. Let's allow crazy ideas to happen, even if it doesn't sound like it's perfect, or it may disturb some of us because it's a pop-up bistro near the park and there's other elements that may not be great about it. Let's allow this stuff to evolve. I think there's this dynamic thing that is in the air. And I think in a post-COVID world, I think it behooves us to embrace some of the weirdness. I think that'd be wonderful.
Say yes more.
That's a great way to end it. And I want to thank, speaking of that, I want to thank all of our friends in Toronto who have spent the better part of an hour listening to things about Ottawa.
We love Toronto too. Toronto's, Lindsay and I have a place there. We're there fairly often. We love it, but Ottawa's our home.
For sure. No, same for me. So that's great. Anyway, so with that, thank you very much. Harley, Lindsay Taub. I'll turn it over to Chantal, and we'll look forward to doing this sometime again. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Harley and Lindsay. That was so inspiring. You're such amazing people. And next time we're in Ottawa, we'll have to check out all those spots. I feel like we'll have to reshare your list with everyone here.
We can do a monthly list or Lindsay's list is actually probably better than my list. A monthly list of new gems we found.
It's awesome. We did record this, so I'm sure people are going to take notes as they're watching this video again. So thanks again for your time. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Duncan, as well. This was amazing, and we hope to do it again soon.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.